What's up, friends? My name is Jess. Welcome back to my channel. We're just gonna get right into it because, as you can tell from the title of this video, I have a bunch of books that I'm going to unhaul. I think it's 67 books if I counted correctly. I don't want this video to go on forever, so I'm just gonna speed through the books and give you like a quick whatever I can remember for why this ended up in the unhaul pile. And if you're wondering why there are so many books in this pile, it's because this has been accumulating since I moved to this apartment in, what was it, June or July of 2020, so it's been 2 years. And in those 2 years, I started my Purging My Shelves videos where the whole purpose was trying to get rid of books. So you're gonna see all of those books in these piles as well. We're just gonna get started. Okay, first we have The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I read this in one of my Purging My Shelves videos. It was the Classics edition. This is my most hated book. It just sucks. The character's awful. He hates women. I hate him. If you want more details about any of these books, by the way, I'll leave a list of the videos that I mention that these books are in the description down below. The Beautiful and the Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Also read this for the Purging My Shelves Classics edition. This to me represented a bad period in my life. I was in a bad mental state when I first read this and liked it. And the second time that I read it, not very much. These characters are kind of annoying and they're extremely entitled. Next, Ransom by Lois Duncan. I might have read this for one of my Purging the Shelves video, maybe like a crime fiction one, but this is an extremely short book. And from what I can remember, it just didn't satisfy as much. It didn't focus on the things that I would have liked it to focus on. I'm never gonna read it again. There are better crime fiction and thriller books out there. Next, The Columbus Affair by Steve Berry. I don't even know what this is. Okay, a Pulitzer Prize winning investigative journalist who's been exiled. This just feels like your very classic kind of political conspiracy book, which there are a dime a dozen, and I'm sure that there are better out there, but mostly I think like I'm just not in this phase of reading anymore that I would want to keep this. The fact that I don't even remember what this is, that explains like it didn't stick with me at all. This Suitcase is Going to Explode by Tom Arties. This is a very cool edition. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it. Like, it has one of those holographic, like, the image changes kind of covers, which I would keep it for that alone. But again, another, like, political catastrophe kind of story. And it's one of the older ones, too, so you already know, like, the depiction of women is kind of very annoying. I'm not mad about reading it. I enjoyed it while I did read it, I think. But I'm never gonna want to read it again. A Spanish edition of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I do want to read more books in Spanish just for the sake of improving my Spanish literacy. It's a toss-up whether or not I'll want to read Wuthering Heights again in English, let alone in Spanish. I'm not going to read it in Spanish. That's ridiculous. It was hard enough reading it in English. Next, The Witch by Mary Ann Mitchell. I read this for, I think, my first Purging My Shelves video, which was the paranormal edition. So if you want more thoughts on this, you're going to have to check that one out because I don't really remember it beyond the fact that I didn't really like that there was a relationship between the very young babysitter and the father. It was messed up and it was manipulative and it was toxic. And again, another book that I enjoyed it while I was reading it because like it was an interesting enough story, but it's not so interesting that it'll still be good a second time. And what I really want is to accumulate a collection of books that I would love to read over and over again. And this is just not it. Silent Witness by Richard North Patterson. This is like a court story, which I found very interesting while I was reading it, mostly because I was interested in like the strategy the attorneys were employing and like the mystery of who was telling the truth and who wasn't, and the court intrigue interested me, which now I think is even funnier because I think at the time that I was reading this I hadn't yet gotten my job at a law firm yet, and now I somewhat understand more how courts actually work. Anyway, I did really enjoy that aspect of the book, but the basis of the court case is a teenager who was murdered and was found to be pregnant with the baby of her coach, I think, and our main character is the defense attorney for the coach. I'm not saying that it's supporting that or anything, but it was very uncomfortable, it was very gross, and I don't know, it feels kind of icky. If you have read any court fiction stories that you really love, please let me know in the comments because I would love to read more books like that, but with like less ickiness maybe. Worst Case by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. This is a crime fiction thriller, and I read this for my Purging My Shelves crime fiction video, so you can get more details there. Basically, I did not like that we were very much supposed to be on the side of the cops here and made to feel like the villain, who I admit did bad things, is a horrible guy when he was actually, I think he was criticizing things like people not treating the environment correctly and like classism and things like that, which fair enough. The guy had like good reason to be criticizing all of that. It did not do a good job of balancing the fact that his actions were bad, but his ideas had foundation. Like, he had reason to be upset about these things. And I'm not here for a book that's just trying to get me to be like, I don't know, a bootlicker. Illusion Deception by Michelle Bones. I never finished this. I got maybe 30-40 pages into it and I could not handle it anymore because it was so clear that this was not edited by anyone. It was just badly written. I'm very sorry to Michelle Bones. I'm sure she will never see this video, but it was very poorly written and I could not handle it. The Kusanis Game by Wolfgang Jeschke. This is a time travel story and about 200-300 pages into it, at which point I DNF'd it. We still hadn't had any time travel. I'm sure you can see why I was upset about it. Bowl of Heaven by Gregory Benford and Larry Niven. This is a sci-fi book. It has a level of science that I did not care for. It was boring, a little bit over my head, but maybe just poorly explained, because this book was also not very well written. It just wasn't very well written. There were some errors. Of course, there was like some misogyny and sexism, obviously. This, I think, was one of the very first books I talked about on my channel. I think it's in a September wrap-up. All right, Jack Maggs by Peter Carey. This is a historical crime fiction. It's following an Australian criminal, I think it is, or a criminal who has been banished to Australia. I don't really remember. Yeah, he was deported to Australia. And he's like trying to build a new life there. I remember liking it as I was reading it. I thought it was interesting, but it was a very slow story if I'm remembering. And I hadn't originally wanted to unhaul it, and then the more I thought about it, the more I didn't think about it. You know, I just couldn't remember anything that happened in it. It just wasn't something that was going to stick with me, and I wasn't so interested in it that I would want to read it again. Sweet Says by Irene Nemirovsky. This is a World War II book, I think, that takes place in France. It was good enough while I read it, but the thing about this is that this was published after the author died, I think. And this wasn't actually a finished book. She never got around to being able to finish it before she died, and I think that shows in the book itself. It's not fully edited, it's not fully developed. It was very interesting. I'm sure some people would find it fascinating to read something that hadn't fully been finished, but I personally just didn't find a lot of satisfaction in it, so. Tell No One by Harlan Coben. This is a thriller about a missing wife, I'm pretty sure, and I think people suspect that the husband is the one who did it. Yeah, it's a missing wife, and then a message appears that makes him think that his wife might still be alive. Misogyny and sexism is present, of course. Who would have thought? It was interesting to read the first time around, but this is a story that I think fully relies on the plot twist. Like, if you were to read this again already knowing what's going to happen, then it just doesn't hold up as well as it did the first time. So now that I've read it, now that I know what the plot twist is, I'm not going to read it again. A lot of my unhaul is based on whether or not I would want to read books again, and the answer is no. The Seer of Shadows by Avi. I read this in my Purging My Shelves paranormal edition, I think. Yeah, it's a younger book about like ghosts captured in photographs and stuff. It wasn't bad or anything, it's just not my kind of book. I'm too old to be the audience for it, and I think there are probably like better books that explore the same topic out there. Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohen and David Levithan. This is a bad book. You should just watch the Netflix adaptation to it. The characters were so annoying, they were so pretentious. It felt like a book that was trying to be woke and diverse, but so very much missed the mark. It was not good. All right, this dusty thing that I literally got rid of the dust jacket for, and I don't know why I did that. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Yes, I read this monster of a book, and I'm very proud to be able to say that I have read Anna Karenina. But now that I've read it, I'm never going to do that again, and I'm also probably never going to read another Leo Tolstoy book, because while I am proud of it, and I'm glad that I could check it off my bucket list, it just wasn't worth it. It's so many pages, and a lot of it is a lot of philosophizing that I didn't really care about. How many pages is it? It's like 732 pages, and for what? Okay, The Quick by Lauren Owen. This is a vampire book. I remember that. It's Victorian London vampire book. I think like the biggest selling point to me was the fact that it had gay vampires in it, but like that wasn't even like a main storyline or anything like that. And it's a thick one. I think, if I remember correctly, I just thought it was just too slow. It was just too much. Okay, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I understand the good parts about it. I understand how this this could be like a feel-good story, and how it can teach some kids good morals. But all of those feel-goods and good morals are also surrounded by like some ableism and some racism, and why? Like, there are other books who can also teach kids good morals, and they don't need to be like this. Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I hate this book. It's so bad. It's just a bad book. And my biggest gripe every time that I talk about it is the fact that Selena Sardothian, who's like the main character, is said to be again and again like the best assassin in the whole wide world or whatever. But you never see her being a badass assassin, okay? She just says that she is and then doesn't do anything to prove it. And actually, I'm pretty sure people sneak up on her all the time in this book, so how good of an assassin is she really? Okay, these next two books are Corazón by El Mundo de Amicis. Is that how you say his last name? I'm not sure. And then Muchachas by Boris Biedny? I don't know how to say that either. These are two Spanish books. When I visited family in Cuba back in, I want to say 2015 or something like that, they had heard that I really like to read, so every time we visited somebody new, they had like books that they just gave me. So I left Cuba with like a whole bunch of books in Spanish. I haven't read a single one of them because I'm very intimidated by reading in Spanish, but a while ago I went through all that pile of books and I weeded out the ones that I'm just not interested in the premise of, and so I wouldn't have picked out for myself, or if I did pick them out for myself at the time, now I'm just not interested in it. And so I'm only keeping the Spanish books that I am actually interested in the story of, and these did not make the cut. Time of the Witches by Anna Myers. This is a middle grade Salem witch trials story. This is just very much for a younger audience. It's not for me anymore, and I know that there are better witchy books out there. Black Ice by Becca Fitzpatrick. I didn't have a problem while I was reading this. It was like entertaining enough, but in reality, not that great. We have our main character, Britt, and her friend who get stranded on a mountain because of a blizzard, and they find themselves getting help from these two strange men, and then they find out that these two strange men are criminals, obviously, because what else would the plot be, really? And it goes from there. I think my biggest issue with this is the fact that this is a romance between Britt, our main character, and one of the criminals who like very much kidnaps her. Okay, this is very random. This isn't even a book. This is the 27 edition of the Associated Press style book. It has a lipstick mark on it because I did some photo shoot with it for, I don't know, some magazine that I wrote for at the time because I was an editor, so obviously I used the AP style book. This is the grammar writing style book for journalism, in case you didn't know. The Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice. I mentioned this in one of my wrap-ups. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. These 3 books that I read in this series are just so long and they drag on forever, and it's just, maybe there are little golden nuggets, but they're surrounded by so much bogged down story. I could not take it anymore. I think I DNF'd this maybe. The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Nefeniger. I read this for my Purging My Shelves romance edition, I'm pretty sure. I thought the writing of it was very beautiful, but like the relationship itself is very questionable. You've got like a man who is 30 years old when he meets his future wife who is 6 years old. Granted, this is a time travel story where they're essentially meeting each other and their love story is happening in opposite directions of time, but it was still very questionable and it felt very much like grooming. The first 5 books of the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, like, it wasn't that bad while I was reading it. I understand why like younger me was entertained by these stories. They're so long. It doesn't stop. Like, it's so clear that this was meant to be an original trilogy and then they added on more for, I guess, money's sake. It went on forever and it wasn't good enough to warrant the massive amount of space that this would take up on my shelves, which is how I judge things very much. I look at books and I ask myself, did I enjoy these books this amount of space? Because I only have these 2 shelves. It's these shelves and that's it. And I don't want to give up space for these books. Speaking of series, we've got the first 4 books of the Pretty Little Liars series, which is, oh, this is definitely not in the right order. Pretty Little Liars, Flawless, Perfect, and Unbelievable. Really what was unbelievable was how bad these books were. Honestly, just watch the TV show. The TV show is kind of ridiculous. It's very over the top, it's convoluted, but it's kind of entertaining, kind of addictive. And these books are, believe it or not, even more cringy and convoluted, and everything that you maybe didn't like in the TV show is worse here. Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac by Gabriel Zevin. I also read this for one of my Purging My Shelves videos. It was unforgettable. That's what it was. Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen, also in the same Purging My Shelves video, and I think also the same. I think it's not a story that's really gonna stick with me. I enjoyed it while I read it, I'm pretty sure, but like, it's whatever. The Adoration of Jenna Fox by Mary E. Pearson. I think this talks a lot about the ethics of like bioengineering and like creating a body. I'm pretty sure that's what it talks about. And like the discussions itself would have been very interesting, but the book is like maybe just too young for me, but the writing of it felt very amateur. It didn't feel very developed. It didn't feel very well written. So while I didn't hate it while I was reading it, I just feel like I wanted more and it wasn't executed as I would have wanted. So I would rather just find another book with a similar premise and read that. Okay, The Mimic Men by V.S. Naipaul. I don't even know what this is. I DNF'd this book. I remember that. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. I have had this book for forever. I think I got it like maybe middle school. So I remember nothing about it. I don't remember if I really enjoyed it or not. A while ago, I learned that Sherman Alexie is not a very good guy, especially in his treatment of women. Can't remember the details of it, I'll be honest with you. I just remember he wasn't a good guy. He's not the kind of person that I would want to support. There are much better Indigenous authors to support and get their books. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. This is a book about disability that's written by somebody who themselves is not disabled. I think they like maybe kind of based it off of their friend's disability, but I also don't think their friend had the same disability. It feels like what it is. A book written from a perspective that the author themselves would never be able to understand. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I think I might have talked about this in one of my wrap-ups. While I did appreciate the plot twists in this story the first time I read it and the second time that I read it, basically none of the characters in this book like women, and it really shows, and it was kind of annoying. Okay, New Year's Eve Murder by Leslie Mayer. I definitely talk about this in a wrap-up. I read this book trying to recreate the magic of another Leslie Mayer book that I read that was very much a cozy mystery. This is less cozy mystery, more fat phobia, and just more uncomfortable than I would have liked. It was kind of problematic. Dear John by Nicholas Sparks. I read this for a Purging My Shelves romance edition video. Literally cannot remember anything about it. I remember that it was like kind of insta-love. I don't know. It just wasn't worth my time. Anthem by Anne Rand. I don't really support Anne Rand or her views, and I was gonna read this for one of the Purging My Shelves videos, and then I was like, no, I love myself too much to reread this. Okay, the Mara Dyer series by Michelle Hodkin. Yes. I was interested in what these books were trying to do, but I also feel like it didn't really do what it was trying to do, and so I was left unsatisfied. Nevermore by James Patterson. I really loved the Maximum Ride series when I was younger. I never finished the series, however, and at some point in a thrift store I came across this book, and it's the last book in the series. It was like for $1 or something. So at the time I was like, yeah, I might as well like pick it up while I can. But the thing is, like, I'm not interested in rereading the Maximum Ride series and finally finishing it, at least not for like a long while probably, and this is like book 12. I might as well get rid of it, and then if I decide to reread the series and I decide that I like it and I want the whole thing, then I'll get it again. The Dragon's Revenge by Connor Caustic. Definitely talked about this in a wrap-up. This was a gift from another booktuber called A Couple Books, I think it is, and it's a literary RPG book, which is a genre that I want to try out because I've read some of these lit RPG books that I thought were very entertaining, but this one just didn't hit for me. I remember that there was some like uncomfortable fetishization of Asian women. It could have done with a couple more rounds of editing, I think is what it was. Sold by Patricia McCormick. I know I talked about this in a wrap-up. I can't remember why exactly I got rid of it. This talks a lot about like the sexual slavery that takes place in Nepal or took place in Nepal. And this was written by a white woman who was just a journalist, I think, and who spoke to people who had like closer connections to the issue at hand. And I think there was just something uncomfortable about that to me. And also about the fact that Americans are very much portrayed as the heroes in this story. I don't know, it felt a little bit white saviory. That's what I'll say. Princesses Behaving Badly. This is a collection of real stories that was put together by Linda Rodriguez McRobbie. I mean, it was entertaining enough while I read it. It was cool reading like little stories about different princesses that have lived throughout history and who were doing things like charging into battle and like killing people and stuff like that. It was interesting, but like this definitely isn't something that I'm gonna read again. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I liked the representation of OCD and anxiety. I thought that was really well done, and as far as I'm aware, that is like Own Voices representation. It was very young. It just feels like John Green's writing has not developed as much as I would expect it to have developed since the time that he wrote The Fault in Our Stars. So I think it would work better for like early high school, middle school age. Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I read this for the Purging My Shelves Classics edition. It's just not my type of book. This is very much just like, I guess, like slice of life. We're just following snippets of Anne's life, and I found it kind of boring, and I didn't really like the Christian moralizing that was happening. Legend by Marie Lu. I think I've just aged out of this book. It was like entertaining while I was reading it, but it wasn't anything special, and I didn't really care either about the results of it. The books are knocked over. God damn it. We need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver. This is like a series of letters written by a mother whose son was a school shooter. I don't really recall what my feelings about this were. I feel like I maybe talked about this in a video or another. I thought this book was like trying to make money off of an experience that does not belong to the author themselves. Oh, I also remember that I found the mother to be very annoying. She was not a likable person. The son, who turned out to be a school shooter, was also comically villainous. Okay, Three Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake. I did read this entire series. This is just the only book that I own, and I considered keeping it, and I just ended up deciding like, no, not really. The concept was interesting. I found it very interesting, but the execution was not so good. It was predictable as hell. The Thing on the Doorstep and Other Stories by H.P. Lovecraft. I tried reading this like 2 separate times, and I could not do it. I kept getting bored of it. And also H.P. Lovecraft is just like so blatantly racist. I mean, like, there's better horror stories. I don't need to read it. Kissed by an Angel by Elizabeth Chandler. I think I also read this for one of the Purging My Shelves videos, maybe the paranormal one. I don't know. It was a very obsessive romance, which I think was problematic at the time. And also another book that, like, enjoyable enough while I read it, I'm just never gonna read it again. I have no desire to. In the Woods by Tana French. I read this for the Purging My Shelves crime fiction edition, I think. I am still mad as hell that this introduced a mysterious background to the main character, and at the end of this book never resolved it, never talked about it ever again. So I'm mad about it. I hated the way this ended. Prophecy of the Sisters by Michelle Zink. I read this for the Purging My Shelves paranormal edition, I think. Literally do not remember my feelings about it. I'm imagining that it was like for a much younger audience than I, and therefore I didn't enjoy it. Okay, we've got a couple more Spanish books. We have Propuesta para Matar a Salinger by Osvaldo Antonio Ramirez, and we have La Novela de Mi Vida by Leonardo Pal. I just wasn't interested in these premises. Vanished by Meg Cabot. Also read this for the Purging My Shelves paranormal edition video. I DNF'd this because this was very much problematic. They made fun of like self-harm. I think they made fun of suicide. I think there was phobia. And this was all in like the first 60 pages, which is about how much I read before I DNF'd it. And the main character was annoyingly not like other girls. And then the last book, which I just added to the unhaul pile, was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Until today, I didn't think I was gonna unhaul it. I enjoyed it, but it didn't stick with me so much that I would want to read it again one day. And it did not strike me as emotionally hard as like people keep saying that it struck them. So, okay, I got through all of those books as fast as I possibly could. And it still seems like I've been recording for I think 50 minutes. But we're done. We're done. Those are all the books that I'm going to unhaul. I'm sure that there will be another unhaul video maybe sometime next year because we're planning to move out of this apartment and move into a new one, in which case I'm gonna want to get rid of more books, because when you have to move and pack them all up and like physically carry them to another place, all of a sudden you start to care about certain books less. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you disagree with any of these books that have made it to my unhaul pile, please argue in the comments. I will see you in the next one.